Today I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm interviewing World Archery presidential candidate Greg Easton. We cover a wide range of topics, from World Cups to compounds in the Olympics. I found it very interesting. If you do too, please subscribe. There's going to be more archery interviews coming up in the future. Welcome, Greg. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Michael. Glad to be here.
And I'm sure myself, like a lot of people, we know the name, we know the face, and would like to know more about the man, if that's okay with you.
Sure. You want me just to start you got some questions for me?
Yeah, absolutely do have. Could you start off with just talking about how has archery, the sport, been a part of your life? Not the business, but the actual sport.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking not too long ago about this, and I remember early memories of being out at my grandmother's house where my grandfather lived, and some of the early production was actually done in their house. And being out there, I remember playing. They had a wood pile behind the house with a bunch of cut down of the oak trees and things that would fall, but they had the wooden dowels, the square little dowels that he made wooden arrows out of. So we used to play with those, of course, and would shoot in his yard. He had actually had 90 meters in the front yard, a long driveway, and then another target in the back. And so shooting at remember that from early on, shooting at his house, flipping quarters for, I think it was, I want to say Howard Hill. Honestly, I don't remember, but very close distance at a target, you'd flip like a $50 and he'd hit it with his arrow. So, kind of archery from the beginning. I actually have a little scar, right? Tiny scar right here on my thumb where I did an overdraw and put the point of the arrow into the back of my hand. I mean, no damage, but it just put a little scar right there on the back of my.
If that's not the sign of an authentic archer, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
know what is.
I grew up not shooting a lot. My parents got divorced. I was living at not with my dad and at the factory, but spent a lot of time once I got kind of actually into high school in the factories. So worked in the couple of summers, 3 summers. I'd go and work through all the jobs in the factory. And matter of fact, I was just giving somebody a tour and I walked by one of the machines. I'm like, that's the one I started on, however many years ago, a lot of years ago now. So spent a lot of time on the kind of the business side of it for years. And then when I moved up here to Salt Lake City and started getting involved with the archery companies, I got more involved and started shooting more. And now I do a little bit of hunting sometimes, and then also shoot Vegas and have a lot of fun there. It's hard not to have fun at the Vegas shoot.
Absolutely. I recommend it to every target archer. They should go at least once in their life, if not once a year.
Yes, for sure.
So when you talk about your grandfather, that would be Doug Easton. So he actually sort of invented the first aluminium arrow. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, he did. He was, I can tell, kind of the short version of the story, but he was in a gun hunting accident, shotgun accident, where a loaded shotgun slid off a car, discharged, and shot off a good portion of his leg. He was in the hospital for almost a year, we think, because of a big recovery with that. And his father, we believe, gave him a book that was, the title of the book was Hunting with the Bow and Arrow by Dr. Pope. Dr. Pope, if you know Pope and Young, or if you do any hunting, people know who Pope and Young are. That was Pope.
And I even know that name. Yeah.
Pope. There was one of the last Native American Indians who was living outside of civilization, our civilization. His tribe all died off. He came walking out of the woods up near Berkeley, California, and was taken in by Dr. Pope and Young at the university, and they took care of him and learned from him, learned his language, learned how to hunt. He wrote the book. My grandfather read the book. When he got out, he started making wood bows and arrows. We actually have some woodworking in our family history from many generations ago. So started woodworking and making bows and arrows and sold a few. And then he was in Golden Gate Park shooting his bow and arrow, and a gentleman came up and was watching him shoot. And when they got done, they started talking, and he said, I noticed your archery tackle there, your bow and arrow set. That's a nice set of equipment. Where did you get it? And my grandfather said, well, I made it. I said, well, that's interesting. How did you learn how to make it? And he said, well, I read a book by Dr. Saxon Pope. And he said, well, I have to introduce myself, son. I'm Dr. Pope. So we think that sort of changed his trajectory. And we still have some of the Easton longbows around that have the Diamond E engraved on the handle that he made. But then, yes, got into arrows. And I think, like my dad and like myself, I've not as much as they did, but the problem with wooden arrows back then, I never did this, but you had a card on your quiver that was a clocking card, So you knew your number one arrow hit in the
Okay.
3 o'clock in the eight ring, and so you'd aim the
Hmm.
other side. So every arrow you never aimed at the middle, even though we tried hard to make consistent arrows. And my grandfather, I think that was driving him nuts. We're a sport
Um,
all about accuracy, and we're never aiming at the middle.
I'm sure.
So he started experimenting with everything he could come up with, steel and everything else, and then finally came across aluminum and added a process that's not in any of the metallurgic books at the end to make it a really good arrow. And the rest is kind of history, if you will.
That is, I'd say that's a turning point for your family for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Grandad. Is your shooting progressing as you like, or would you like some expert coaching from a friendly face? If so, the details are in the description. Before we move on to World Archery, which is the sort of real topic we're here for, could you, for the people who don't know, because our sport, we have so many new people coming into our sport, and I know on my channel I'm always getting questions for people who are just new to it. Could you outline what are your family's businesses and your ties to the industry before we move on to the interesting World Archery stuff?
Sure. Yeah. The businesses started in, as I just explained, started in archery, and we were in that for many years up until probably the late 70s and 80s. Actually, my dad began getting us into other sports. We got into baseball bats. So some people, if they play baseball or softball, know the Easton bat. Hockey sticks. Wayne Gretzky broke the record of goals shooting our hockey stick, and we had some bicycle components and other
I remember.
parts.
Yeah.
If you're a biker, you remember some of the name too. So he built
As
all
an
that.
archer, there's nothing cooler than having a set of Easton wheels. Just to be honest.
Yeah, it's nice. And he built up that business while keeping the archery business going, and he sold he sold off what we called the team sports businesses in 2006 for a lot of different reasons, and just was kind of the right time for that business. And so we held on to the archery companies, which was Easton, called Easton Technical Products, and Hoyt Archery, the bow company. Held on to those businesses, and with a lot of the proceeds from that sale, he put a lot of that into the Easton Foundations. So that's kind of the third thing in my world, if you will. I got the two operating companies, and then the Easton Foundation. That's Easton Sports Development Foundation. We've helped other sports over the years, but for the most part, we spend money on archery. We build archery centers. We support USA Archery. We do different things around the world. So just try what we say is inspire growth in archery. We can't do it all, but we need to find people that have the great ideas or have the opportunities and need some help to get something going. And that's what we like doing, is trying to help grow archery around the world.
You might not know this, but actually the first international job I ever had as a coach was working for the Easton Foundation. My friend at the time, Don Rabska, needed someone to go to Bhutan, and compound archery is super popular in Bhutan, but they shoot with their fingers, 150 meters, aluminium arrows, and that's their traditional archery. And we wanted to have a project there to introduce them to target archery, release aids, peep sights, and try and get them to have a team that could compete at world championships. And I went there for 14 days, and it was actually the start of my international coaching career. And
Wow.
there we go. 13 years later, I'm still on the road. So I'm sitting in Sri Lanka right now.
Oh, are you really? Yeah. Well, very good. Yeah, I remember reading about that. And, Bhutan, I just was talking to someone from Bhutan about their traditional archery versus the modern archery, and some of almost the conflict there between, what's real archery, what isn't, type of thing. So, but they're still trying to keep up the modern archery.
Absolutely. They seem to be going from strength to strength. So that's great to see. So could you just touch on, because I think a lot of us, I've been a member of World Archery for so many years, of course, over 30 years now. Could you give us a rundown of just sort of the basic structure and how you're hoping to be elected? How does that work? Because I won't lie, it's been a long time since we've had this process done. So I'd be curious just to remind people, what is the structure and what process are we going through right now?
Sure, yeah. Well, the structure, I guess, kind of from the top of World Archery. World Archery is the international federation for the sport of archery, recognized by the IOC. World Archery is based in Lausanne, Switzerland, the Olympic city. IOC's there. Many other sports are there to stay inside that ecosystem, if you will, and stay connected with everybody. World Archery sets rules, recognizes world records, oversees the competition, for example, at the Olympics. We're not the organizer, but we would send technical delegates there to make sure everything's done to the standards of World Archery. The real benefit of something like World Archery, archery was in the Olympics many, many years ago. It came back in 1972. The reason it left the Olympics is there wasn't an international body or one that was governing the rules well. And so every time you went to a different country, if you went to Bhutan, you'd shoot their version of archery. And so only the home country would win almost. And it ended up getting kicked out of the games because of that. Then World Archery comes along, does all the, governing, setting rules, doing all that. And eventually we got back into the games. Why that's important is the IOC, that's where a lot of the funding for most federations come from. It's from the Olympic revenue that comes down to the IOC and then out to the federations. And our job is really to keep governing the sport and, in my mind, developing it, helping countries grow their sport, like you did in Bhutan, being able to, not that World Archery did that, but to be able to support those kind of efforts to grow archery around the world. There are about 150 nations that are members of World Archery. So those are the people who are the voting members for our rules, for positions like president that I'm running for. And we have a Congress coming up in just a couple of weeks now in Korea. A lot of those members will be there voting in person, and we will elect a new president. That'll be really the first time the current president, he is terming, he is at end of his term. He was in there for 20 years, and actually the new term limit is now 12 years. So the most I could serve would be 12 years. And looking forward, I really wanted to get involved and see how I could give back to archery. I've talked to probably about 110 countries over the last 4.5 months now on a lot of calls like this, Zoom type of calls, just to understand what's going on in their country and what they would want or need or desire from World Archery. But what really struck me was, one, how great the people are. And I think it's interesting in general in archery, they just seem to be good folks. Yeah. And how many of them are volunteers? How many of them are taking money out of their own pocket to try to get an athlete to travel or try to get a bow or whatever they're trying to do? And it made me really think, everything I've got came from archery, if you really think about it. And a way for me to give back. I won't take the salary because it's you have to be full time, and I still have some other interests, and but want to be able to lead that like I think led some other teams pretty successfully to just service the members better. I just think there's a lot of opportunities, and talking to folks, it's a lot of commonality between what they'd like to see different. Some of it very achievable. So that's what I'm going to go do.
So how do you rate the current position of World Archery? Because from us on the outside as archers, I wouldn't know if it was on the financial brink of disaster or whether it was a 5-star gold organization, because we're sheltered from so much of it. We're more in tune with how the international tournaments work and rule changes. We don't really know, as many people like me, we don't really know what goes behind the seat. How would you rate the position at the moment?
Yeah, it's I would say it's in a very good position. I think the current leadership has done a good job. I'm not running to be critical of them in any way. It's really just bringing something new, some fresh thoughts, a new direction. So we're in a good position. We moved up, I don't know how many years ago in the Olympic ranking from the IOC, which means we're a more core sport, but also means we get a little better share of the revenue. And so, nice. Our income is fine. You got to make it last 4 years because they give you just once after the games, but in a pretty good financial situation. That doesn't mean we have, I think with anybody's budget, there's never any extra money laying around. It really comes down to allocating. What decisions are we making to allocate that money? Where are we going to spend it? And that's a big avenue I need to look at to say, okay, are we spending it in the ways that helps our member associations the best we can? So looking at that reallocation. But I think a good situation, the World Cup production that comes out of the World Cup, top quality product. I mean, from a television standpoint, top quality product. I can't say anything negative about that. Costs a lot of money, and that money ends up making the expense for the member associations and the athletes really very high. And so that needs to be I've committed to what I would say rethink the World Cup. Not that we need the event, but rethink the costs. What's driving the
Okay.
cost for that event?
So I was going to ask, so was there a particular point or a particular turning point that made you think, or a particular cause that made you think, no, I need to, I'd like to step up and do this? Was there a particular thing, or was it a more general?
No, it was. I would say probably not a necessarily an epiphany moment, but I've been asked about this for probably 10 or 15 years. I see people around the world, you need to come run World Archery. I'm never exactly sure why. I mean, I know my dad did a lot of good things, but they're, oh,
Yeah.
we need you. And okay. I had entertained it for a while. Then, due to some other situations going on, I actually ended up resigning from the World Archery Board about 2.5 years ago. For some personal reasons that have been taken care of and managed, but some professional just wanted to kind of focus someplace else for a while, and that gave me a chance to kind of look back and after a little time think about archery some. I started getting involved again with internet, what's going on internationally through a different effort I was doing. It had really nothing to do with World Archery, but a lot of the people we were connecting with were saying the same thing again. Hey, we need, even a more desperate cry, if you will. So I think the bottom line is I just heard a lot of requests, a lot of need that they wanted to consider some other opportunities, and there was only one candidate at that time.
Okay.
And I thought, hey, if I get in, one, I'm giving people a choice. I think a choice is a good thing.
I think everyone would agree it's better to have two
Yeah.
candidates than one.
Yep. And
Sure.
some competition, meaning that competition makes people raise their game, maybe pay attention, listen more, and that sort of thing. So I think that was accomplished. And but still, as I started talking to everybody, really, like I said, heard a lot of very common concerns that probably aren't terribly newsworthy for anybody in the organization, but the fact that I think we need to do something about it, not just listen to these concerns.
Okay. Okay. No, makes sense. So do you think, so for the archer standing on the shooting line,
Mhm.
if you were to be successful, become president, what do you think could possibly change for that person on the shooting line, as opposed to, I totally understand the changes you can make to an organization. What
Yeah.
do you think could be the benefit for the person standing on the line? Maybe they're standing on the line at a World Cup. Maybe they're standing on the line at a continental qualifier. Do you
Mhm.
think they will see a difference? Because I think it's been surprised to me how much a president can shape an organization and move things.
Yeah, and it's a lot of it. I think is based in the culture of the organization, and that's a big focus for me. I think, if what they say about a culture, if you don't manage and intentionally do the culture, you will have one, whether you like it or not. And I think the culture can be much more customer service oriented. This is not necessarily answering your Archer question yet, but I'm going to get there. So more
Okay.
customer service oriented towards the member associations. I think for the Archer on the line, I can talk about some concerns I hear raised that I think can be addressed. One was the cost of events, especially the World Cup events. I think we can
Indeed.
figure out a way to, just got to rethink the product and how do we want to reduce costs where we can on that product. There are, well, often, not often, sometimes rule changes made that people sort of scratch their head and I'm on the field and they're like, oh yeah, this just changed. And I think, okay, well, why? And they're like, we have no idea what they're trying to accomplish. They've just changed this rule, trying to be at least more collaborative and more communicative about
Okay.
that. Look at
Hmm.
here's where we are. Here's what we think the problem is. Here's where we're going to go. Let's all agree that that's the target, if you will, to use there it is on that side. Use the analogy. There's the target. I think we should make this change to get there and let people, they can give you some input of, yeah, that's probably will work, or this is the other problems that'll cause. So be more collaborative. So there's a little less, maybe a rule change comes in and then it goes back out. So that hopefully a little better for the archers. And then just trying to be a little more, I'm trying to think of the right word exactly, but a little more supportive of them in the effort to be out there and be shooting, and a little less uh, punitive about infractions they may make, or something that's not really competition related, but something they're doing behind the
Okay.
line. Um, Also, I
I think
sat at a,
oh,
go, I was going to
I was going to
say,
say the
finally,
bit you touched on about the cost of tournaments. That's really quite. Athletes generally fall into two camps on that. They're either from a relatively well-funded national team, like I was lucky enough to be, and then you don't even know how much World Cups cost, or you're in a country where you have to fund yourself and you're acutely aware of how much World Cups cost. So there is two camps, but even if you're in a well-funded team, my country would often do 2 or 3 World Cups and sometimes not 4, and sometimes we wouldn't do the European Grand Prix as well. So even if you're from a well-funded country, the price of the tournaments does impact how much you can do for your funding. So it does affect. And I know that we all should be striving to wanting to be the best in the world and be an Olympic champions, but there is no better motivator than dangling the carrot of, do you want to come and do a World Cup in Antalya? Do you want to come and do a competition? You know, that it does motivate a huge pool of archers. And, you know, I was all about the competition. So yeah, the cost of competitions indirectly or directly really does affect people on the line.
Yeah, I hear about the cost. I hear about the length of them, which is a little tricky. You don't want to just shorten the event and shoot less because they're expensive and you've traveled a long way. But find a way to, is there a structure? And there's a lot of ideas floating around, about basically having some more, even some more, matches, not just eliminating matches, but pool of matches, so that you would have some more match practice. Because for a lot of athletes, they go get a qualifying round of arrows, and then they get maybe 1 or 2 elimination matches, and they're done. And it's like, well, the standing on the line with a bunch of archers is a lot of practice you can do at home. The match play against somebody from another country who could be a lot better than you is maybe the practice they need more.
That is a fair point, and it's something I didn't truly appreciate until I joined more developing teams, that the vast majority of archers go to a tournament, they qualify, and then sometimes it's over, or they qualify and they do three ends of match play. And when I look back at a year of international travel and I calculated how many minutes of intense archery they'd had, it really is quite shocking, because it's the same budget to send them to a competition as it is to send Brady, who's in the gold medal match, shooting the 1 arrow shoot off to win. They both paid the same to go to the competition, but one has had vastly more international practice than the other one. And possibly the other one actually needs more international practice because they're new to the sport. So that is a very interesting idea.
Which they're not getting. So yeah, there's ways to look at it. So I think that's, my focus is not just the organization or the office or the structure, but it is really what's the experience for the member associations, the athletes, even the organizers. I was an organizer here in Salt Lake for a number of World Cup events. And so I I know what that side of it is. I know how much it cost us, how much we lost on each one of those, and saying, there's got to be a different look at that model for the countries that don't get. The countries that do it, a lot of Shanghai and those countries, they get a lot of government support, and that's how it works, which is great for them. They
do a great event every year.
They want to attract a lot of people, to their country and get that exposure. Fantastic for them. But for a lot of countries, you don't get that kind of support, and so how do you make it so they can maybe participate in a World Cup? I think it'd be worth trying to figure out.
Okay, very good. And so at the moment, you're a Salt Lake City guy, is that right? That's your primary base. If you were to get this job, how do you feel as if you're going to split your time? Are you going to be remote, or are you going to be spending more time in Switzerland? How do you think you'll...
Oh, for sure more time than I am now, but yes, I would envision it being quite intense at the beginning of spending some time, working in the office, getting to know the people very well, kind of really understanding what's all going on there, making sure that they're up for the change or the challenge of, hey, we're looking at a new culture, a new way of looking at things here. Are you up for it? So spend a lot of time doing that. And then I know a lot more travel than I've been doing, but I think, I need to, divide up my time and be remote here. And it's really like the companies. I have a president that runs Easton and a president that runs Hoyt. I'm not involved much at all with the day to day. And, that gives me that that leeway to do and focus on other things and only be really involved with really high level strategic things or whatever the
Hmm.
big issue is, or when they want to spend a lot of money, they come to me. But
I
other
should
than
hope
that,
so.
yeah, other than that, they run their businesses and they make the decisions every day. And so that's how I look to run World Archery is make sure I've got the right team in place there that they know what they know that the objective is, they know what their kind of their spending limit is, what they can do without having to come to me and run let them run a successful organization with my oversight and some strategic guidance, not day-to-day operations.
No, I can understand that. That sounds very good.
Yeah, they call it
Sometimes,
just to
sorry, go on.
clarify for maybe for some they call it a president, but when you really look at it, it's much more of a chairman of the board. It's not quite an operating role, at least not in World Archery. The secretary general role or the chief operating officer is really the more of the operating people every day, the president role. So
Okay.
it's not as if I'm taking over a position that is a day-to-day operating role.
No.
It's not today, and I don't intend to change it, but to be more involved.
Okay. And sometimes these positions, as we just touched on, can last for a long time. You've just told me it's being limited to 12 years now. I was going to ask, where do you hope World Archery will be in 15 years? So I'm going to change that. Where would you hope to see, if you were successful and you were elected, where would you hope to see World Archery in 12 years' time?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I would like to, some of these I need to come up with better metrics on, but with our member associations, I'd like to see some of our countries that have been, I think, just developing countries for a long time, not really able to get off the ground, which I think would be, getting to some more international events. I think today some of them can't even get to an international event, so if they get enough support, whether it's coaching, equipment, whatever they need in their region to get to be competitive, or at least getting to international events around the world for member associations. I think also some growth. It's hard to measure because a lot of federations don't keep track of everybody shooting in their country, but I believe a way for World Archery to grow is if the federations grow. And so for me, some real grassroots, and not just grassroots for like how many, how do we get a bunch of archers out of this, but grassroots really from the just more people in their country shooting archery recreationally in schools, wherever it is. One, I think that's good for people. It's good for focus. It's good for kids to develop and learn that skill.
Yeah.
But and it's also could be good for archery because out of that, some archers will come out of that. So it's not necessarily just getting a bunch more competitive archers, but if that's where that goes. So that would be what I'd like to see accomplished. Again, it's a tough thing with a lot of things archery. It's hard to measure them. We don't have a lot of good information around that, but to figure out a good way to measure that.
Maybe that's a goal within itself, is to be more measurable and more accountable. That is a fair goal.
And I think in internationally with the member federations, I envision doing a survey early on when I start my tenure of just kind of satisfaction survey. How's the service? How's the responsiveness? Whatever the questions are, which is the hard part, coming up with the right questions, but get the right questions out there and then do that regularly and be able to say, look, we started at a 5 out of 10 and we're now at a 7 or 8 out of 10, that we can see that we improve the satisfaction with the member associations because they pay membership dues to the federation so that they feel they're getting some value or understanding the value of why they're paying to be a member of World Archery. And I'm sure there's plenty other things, but again, growing at the grassroots level and seeing more countries being able to host World Cup events would be I think a win for me. A country that today says I can't do it, I'd like them to be able to do one someday in the future, in the next 12 years.
That sounds exciting because sometimes it can feel like, oh, we're going here again. I love, as an athlete, I love the thrill of going to a new venue, new country. I won't lie, that was part of the motivator for getting me into the sport, the chance to travel the world. And even when the performance was the focus, it's still nice to go somewhere different and experience new things. So now I'd like to touch on the hottest topic of the year, or when it comes to the hottest topic with people talking to me. It might not be for everyone, but compounds in the Olympics. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, it is a hot topic. I remember when it came up Oh, I bet 8 or 9. I don't. When I first heard about it many years ago at the World Archery level, and I thought, that's interesting, supportive in this sense, but also said, we need to not understand, but just watch. How do I say? Watch out for. Try to be aware of what the unintended consequences might be, and that's the only thing that I still is yet to play out. A lot of federations now are faced with their compound archers saying, "Hey, you give X to your recurvers, you should give that much to us." And the federation a little stuck because they want to treat people equally, if you will, or fairly, not equal, but maybe fairly. And I think maybe that's the point, is fairly. But for federations, what really often drives their funding from their national governing body, like their National Olympic Committee, is medals. And today there's
Yep.
more medals in recurve than there is in compound. So the idea that, okay, now we have this, we're in, but it's not going to be equal in this
No, not at
support
all. Yeah,
support yet. So that's kind of an issue. I worry. I don't think we've seen it yet, but I worry about a country that may abandon their recurve program because we just can't get good at it. We think we can get good at compound. That would be unfortunate, I think, for the kind of this whole sport. Um, and I think the cost, if you will, we paid, which wasn't the original idea. The original idea was trying to get additional
I
slots
know.
for people, as you probably know, a lot of you maybe talked about already, which is it really is just a hard no from the IOC. They've got to cap the games. If they let somebody in, they're not going to be able to stop the flood of people from everybody else. So I kind of get why we ended up turning to, all right, we'll give up some of our recurve slots, and that's has those unintended consequential impact on the countries that maybe were at the lower end of being able to get one of those last spots.
That's
It's
always my fear, is when you cut at the bottom includes more countries than if you cut at the top. Because in the bottom, it is those countries with one player, those
yeah,
countries who just have one individual. And sometimes the success of one individual can kickstart a whole program because
yeah,
they qualified for the Olympic Games. They didn't get a wild card, they qualified, and that can open up all sorts of doors. So when you actually cut, even though I'm a compounder through and through, that's the
yeah.
beginning of my career. Even when I shot recurve for 10 years, I was still a compounder shooting recurve. I never quite made that mental shift. But I know when you cut 12 people from the bottom, that's going to be probably 8 countries. And even if it's only 8 countries, there was probably another 20 countries trying to win those 8 spots. And yeah,
Yeah.
and it is, I'm not saying I have the answer because I don't.
No.
I hear the compound and I know how much they earned it and they deserved it. But I also know there's consequences and I'm not sure what the full answer is. And, but I'm excited
That's
for it and I can't wait
yeah.
to watch it.
I mean, and there's really two impacts of that, as you said, that one athlete just qualifying. I think there's at least two countries I can think of, Brazil and Turkey, who they didn't just qualify, but they had somebody do well at the games, right? And that's still happening today. They're, got a lot of popularity. They get some more money from their Olympic Committee. I mean, all those good things happen. The other thing about those countries that just get the recognition from qualifying, you have to remember that people who vote for what sports stay in the Olympics are the IOC members from all the countries around the world. When that vote comes up, if you've got that athlete that qualified the last games or 2 games ago, whatever, when you've got a positive opinion about archery and how it works in your country, you're more likely to vote to keep it in.
Of course.
If you're not, if you don't even have an Olympic archery program, you don't have, however far the other way you are not being involved, the less likely you are to vote yes. So that's why those, what did you say, the 8 or 10 countries at the bottom who may not even get in today are, in the next games. That's the kind of long-term thing we got to think about, of how do we continue to best we can minimize that impact, keep our sport as universal as we can by competing as many countries as we can. Kind of almost goes all the way back to the World Cups, where if the World Cups are a little more affordable, more of those countries can get to one. If they get to a World Cup and qualify, a lot of them, if they like qualify the top 16, which is still very hard, we know, but
Of
get
course.
in the top 16, their Olympic committee will recognize them, and so all those things happen. So yeah, it's a hot topic, and I think looking forward, and it's a long cycle. It took them 15 or more years to get compound in, right? It wasn't that they weren't trying. It was
I
like,
remember it being discussed when I started in like the early 90s. I remember, oh, it's going to get in, it's going to get in, and it was rejected. And I'd always told athletes, look, they've been talking about it since I was a child. I'm no longer a child. This is never going to happen. And I was surprised, relieved, interested, excited. It is, it's exciting when things are stirred up and you don't quite know what the consequences will be. And I really hope they're all positive, because it is an exciting opportunity.
Yes, yeah, for sure. It's going to be great to see kind of how it plays out in LA. So it'll be exciting.
I'm sure you'll be you'll be impartial, supporting all teams equally, I'm sure.
That's right.
My online coaching classes are for people of all levels, whether you've just started in the sport and want to make rapid progress, or whether you're the best in your country trying to be the best in the world. I believe I've got something to offer you, and again, from a friendly face. So one of the things I'd like to touch on is, wherever I go around the world, I've probably worked with people with over a dozen countries. The number one sort of thing I hear from people is I either get people who want to be coaches or coaches who want to be better coaches, and they always seem to be unable to get courses. The number of people who message me saying, if you hear of any coaching courses, let me know. And yet to me, that feels like quite a basic thing that federations and World Archery would want. But honestly, I get this all around the world all the time. Do you think that's something that World Archery can address? And I don't quite understand where the bottleneck is, because I thought the demand would feed the supply, but it doesn't. Something seems to be missing there.
Yeah, that falls under that term of, they call it development in the international world, of how do you help your countries develop. And coaching is one that comes up from a lot of countries. We need more coaching. I need more coaches. We need more seminars. And so years ago, World Archery had somebody who was dedicated to development. That person retired, and I think that's when their focus on it slowed down a little bit and maybe turned more towards the excellence center there in Lausanne of, okay, how do we continue to run this as best we can? I think it's just a matter of, not just, but a matter of focus and a matter of funding, either reallocating some funding or trying to find some other funds regarding development because of what it can do for kids and focus and that sort of thing. And really having them regionally, when you talk to people like, look, we can't afford to go anywhere, let alone go all the way to Lausanne, a very expensive city to get to.
It is.
And stay.
It is expensive. And if me as an Englishman is feeling it's expensive, I dread to think what it feels like to the 80% of the rest of the world, Yeah.
So I believe, and I know we've done it in the past, if we got the right focus at World Archery, say, okay, the idea is to focus on and run these clinics, get them organized, that World Archery, at least might be able to pay to get the coach there. So, okay, we pay airfare. If the host, whoever's organizing that event, can handle room and board and their fee by collecting money from everybody who wants to come to the coaching clinic, I think it could work, would be the idea. But it would be really saying, look, that is going to be, one of our focuses is working on development and coaching and trying to run those clinics. Kind of hear the same thing from judging and other things, but coaching for sure.
I'm sure coaching is the world I'm in, but so that's what I hear all the time. I'm sure it's the same for the others. But yeah, I've always been surprised why the supply and demand doesn't work, because these are all people they're just happy to pay. They just can't find the opportunities, whereas it feels quite a basic.
Well, if you're looking for something to do as a part-time consultant for World Archery, I may call you again and see if you want to run those programs for us.
I'm always open to opportunities, always. Any excuse to travel.
Yeah.
Now, for a lot of international archers, and they're looking at it from purely a selfish point of view, the topic that's always on their mind is prize money. Do you ever think we'll get to the point, where I'm going to be more realistic, get to the point where maybe the top 50 archers in the world can break even? I'm not saying, are we ever going to get to the point where they're going to be rich? Do you think that's within grasp, or do you think we're always just a little bit too small to truly, obviously we'd all dream of this being like tennis stars traveling around the world, the individuals pay for their own coaches, and it's all perpetuated by sponsorship. And I know we don't fall into that category, but I don't know how much. I mean, don't get me wrong, over my career, over my lifetime, we have made massive progress. Because when I was world number 2, I think my entire career earnings were about $300. So I was world number 2. That's like ending in 2001. So that was my compound career. And yeah, there was no money. Whereas now, of course, there is significantly more.
Yeah.
But do you think it's gone too much? And actually some of that money should be spent on reducing. I mean, what are your sort of feelings on that? Because we like the prize money for the headline and also for our top guys, but also we don't want to be charging someone lower down $2,000 to go to an event just to subsidize the champion.
That's the problem of this. It's allocation of the funds, right? If you're going to say, oh, we're going to pay a bunch more to win at a World Cup, then that's got to come from somewhere, either your development pool or registration fees, wherever it comes from. So that's probably a hard way to go. I've heard some people say, even here in the U.S., if we had a high-paying circuit of archery events, that would fix it. People would come, they would watch, they would want to be involved. And I think a best example of that might be Vegas, meaning, a lot of people watch the finals, but you think about it, it's a lot of people that are there, right? It's not the general public, the guy walking down the strip in Vegas who wants to come in and watch archery. It's a acquired taste, if you will, right? When you know what's going on. And I think the challenge we have with a lot of people who aren't in archery, or even people who have done it at summer camp or some small event, they shot 3 or 4 meters and they hit the center a couple of times, they hit the gold a couple of times, and they see what we do and they think, that's not that hard. I did that in summer camp. Really, I don't think people appreciate. They don't appreciate the distances we're shooting at a World Cup. And even if you look at indoor, they don't really, I don't think they really appreciate, although maybe with a, indoor target where you got one hole for 30 arrows, right? That's pretty impressive, but
that's true.
But that's it's a challenge. So it really comes down to how many people are wanting to watch it, right? How many viewers are out there wanting to, someone was saying the other day, some sport's going to get rid of all their paywalls because some network bought, all their season of shows. And he said, it's going to be free. And I said, well, it's not really free for you. What are you spending? And he thought, you're giving away your attention, right? That's what they're buying. They're buying you watching the screen, seeing the ads, seeing the promotions. And when you've got a lot of people doing it and a lot of people watching it, then you can drive those big sponsors. And I think that's what World Cup circuit was attempting to do, was great TV images. Let's get a bunch of people watching it. And then we would have the big sponsor, and then we would have the big money, but we don't have that big sponsor. So I think it is, unrealistic to think we're, golf, tennis, those sort of circuits where now golf, there's plenty of folks living out of their car, right? The golf on the PGA Golf Tour, the circuit for sure, but the top guys are making money. So I think that'll be, that's a big reach, but trying to figure out how can I'd rather make the events more affordable. There might be other changes we can make in our events to make them able for people to interact a little more if they are watching. I think we miss a lot about the stories and the backstories of our archers. When you think about Olympic broadcasting, and what I understand is what a lot of people like and watch is the backstory, right? The 100-yard dash is under 10 seconds, but what you know is you learn about the archer from your country, the athlete from your country. You learn about all the trials and tribulations they came through, whatever it is. To get there, that we could do a little bit better of selling that story, even if it's to our viewers, which I think I mentioned Archery and Archery TV Plus. I think that's an interesting experiment, but I don't know that it's working, in that everybody I hear says I don't pay for it. It was free. And I like the idea of valuing something you pay for. So free, maybe you don't value it, but if we lost most of our viewers because we put a paywall up, we need to kind of rethink that, among other things.
And I want to confess, I don't pay for it. So I've gone from watching every World Cup to now I'll watch the highlights and I'll look at the online results. I no longer watch the matches, and that is a shame, but also why haven't I paid that? That does say something. I should be ashamed of that, but I haven't, that's the truth, it's different.
It's a challenge. You give it away for a long time and people kind of get used to that. And I don't know that there's a fixed, I have some ideas, not all of them are mine, of course, but ideas that I would like to get into that situation with the TV and the Archery TV Plus and say, wait, what if we did this? And what if we try this, and try to get the people who know also throwing in ideas. And what I found in groups and managing teams and everything else, it's really all about, everybody comes in with what they think the solution is. And first thing you do is spend some time making sure they all agree on the problem, which is much more difficult than you think at times. You think you write the problem on the board and everybody say, yeah, that's it. And a lot of times they don't. So make sure they understand what the problem is or the objective. What are we trying to accomplish here? And then let's get everybody's ideas and what often bubbles out of that is a better idea than anybody thought they walked in with. So use that philosophy to just rethink a lot of these situations and say, let's come up with something else we can try to see if we can, get these viewers back and maybe drive some revenue that way, and figure out how to make it more interactive for all of us and more people wanting to watch.
Sounds good. So tell me, what is your most exciting archery memory?
My most exciting, let's see. Well,
I've thought of this and I've got some ideas of what it might be, but I want to see if you're going to say the same thing.
And I hope everybody catches the humor to this, because it sounds like I don't know what I'm talking about. But probably the most recent one was Las Vegas. We're fortunate enough to shoot as a group the first 2 days, so it's a lot of fun with all my friends. And then when we get divvied up around the hall, I was shooting. A good friend of mine who works with me as a coach, executive coach, was watching me, and he came back after one of the ends, and he's like, he actually afterwards he said, I could tell you were kind of bored, you weren't having fun with your friends. And so he comes back and he says, tell you what, I'll pay you $10 for every arrow in the gold. If you don't hit the gold on an end, then it goes to zero. I'm like, okay, that's fair. This was halfway through the first half. And so I'm shooting, and anyway, at the halfway point, we're switching targets, and he doubles it. I'm going to make it $20. So what I actually tell people is, hey, I shot a 320 today because it got up to $300 going in the last end that he owed me. And I tell you what, I'm glad that first arrow hit the bail. Okay, it's the pressure, right? I was just like, the second arrow I think was a 7, and I'm like, oh God, come on, I can do this. And the third arrow, and I'm like, come on. So I hit the gold. So there's $320. So that was good for me. And I said yes, and the crowd behind me, my buddy and a bunch of people that were also figured out what was going on, they all cheered, and people look at me like, what's going on? I'm like, just won some money. And so yeah, that was the most recent exciting one for sure. It was.
That does sound like fun.
He made that first bet with me, and the guy sitting next to him was like, well, do you know who that is? That's not going to mean anything to him. $10 an arrow, and he said, you watch.
No, competition is competition.
It is. It sure is. So yeah, had a good time doing that.
I'm sure. And when it comes to Olympic memories, Olympic competitions, because how many games have you been to now? Do you think you're lucky enough to have been to watch?
Oh.
Not necessarily as an official, but...
The first games I was involved with was 84 in LA. Didn't do much with archery. I was involved with different parts, actually transportation at that point in time.
Wow.
Oh, that's a great question.
Because I was thinking have you been able to watch Jay Bars win?
No.
Were you there for that?
I was
What about for Justin?
I was in Seoul in 88 when Jay Bars, 88, pretty sure. Yeah.
88, I think.
Yep. When he was there, but I didn't really know him, and I was with Mizuno Sports at the time, so really wasn't involved with the archery. Justin in
96, Atlanta.
Was in Sydney, so saw Simon win down. Simon win down there. That was a good one. He was like Jay and some of the other guys, has a lot of personality, which is sometimes tough for archers. We got to be on the line and be calm, and got to do all this, and then off the line they can light up. And so that was an early one that I attended, and would that one's a fond memory. The mirrored glasses he had and all that on the big screen was pretty cool. So
made an impression on me. I thought they looked super cool for sure.
Yeah.
So also, do you have a favorite bow? Because from my point of view, I've had many bows over the years, but when I think back, when I was 14 years old, I got a Hoyt Super Slam. It's probably the last cast handle that Hoyt ever did before everything went CNC machine. So it was beautifully curved, beautiful pearlescent turquoise green bow. And, I've had 100 bows since then, but still in my mind, that was probably my favorite bow because it meant so much to me. Do you have anything like that?
Well, it's probably the one I'm shooting now, which what I won the money with at the Las Vegas, because I get, Hoyt. They don't give me a bow every year, but they often like, hey, you need to. They made the red, white, and blue one for the Olympic team, and they made one for me with my name on it and the rings, and so that one's kind of for sure pretty cool. Yeah,
that sounds pretty special to me.
I've got to figure out what years ago, couple maybe Las Vegas, not this year, but the year before, I was shooting a now I'm going to blank on the name of the bow, of course. A bow, and I ended up giving it away at the end of the tournament to a kid that I was shooting with, which he then went on to win. I think he won his state championships with it or something like that. So I haven't brought myself to giving away the red, white, and blue one yet. So I got to shoot something else that then I can give away next year.
Especially if it's got your name on it. You probably need to keep that one.
Yeah, hang on to that one.
So now we're just going to finish with which is best. Okay, so I'm going to give you some quick fire, and you just have to tell me which one is best. Okay.
All right.
Is it which is best, scoring 10 or scoring 11?
10.
X10s or X7s?
X10s. Nobody can do that.
I had so many good memories shooting big fat X7s. I think I'm probably X7. 18 meters or 70 meters?
18.
Interesting. Okay. Now the more controversial ones. Recurve or compound?
That's good. Wow. I like them both for different reasons, but if I had to choose one that I probably would shoot, I think I might shoot recurve.
Okay.
I shoot terribly with my recurve, but it's a little easier on my shoulders sometimes in the compound. So
fair enough. I'm not going to ask you to choose which child is the best. So we'll leave it there. I didn't think you'd want to choose compound or recurve. I thought you were going to pass on that. So well done for having the courage to say what you think.
No problem. So, well, thank you. Thank you for your time, and it was a great catching up with you.
Thank you. I found it really interesting, and I hope the viewers did at home as well. Thank you for watching till the end. That was my first interview. How did I do? I thought it was interesting. Let me know in the comments, and as always, good shooting.